Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Keyser. This is the Son of Man Urantia Project. Today we begin Chapter 18, the 12 Apostles, with Part 1 of 5, from Son of Man Urantia, the Life and Teachings of Jesus from the Urantia book. Grab your copy on Amazon, hit that like and subscribe, and then sit back and marvel at the most thrilling story to ever unfold in the cosmos. Chapter 18, the 12 Apostles, Part 1 of 5, Andrew and Simon Peter. Many assume the apostles were uneducated. In Jesus' era, that signified that they were laymen, humble folk with trades, untouched by the formal scriptural training of the rabbis. Yet all of them, except the Alphaeus twins, had graduated from the synagogue schools, and 7 of them had graduated from the schools in Capernaum, considered the best in Galilee. Though most of the apostles were steeped in Hebrew scriptures and the era's knowledge, all were nonetheless deemed ignorant and unlearned by the Jewish priesthood. Jesus revealed the divine truths of the kingdom of heaven to his apostles, gleaning from them in profound insights into humanity's essence across this world and the vast realms of time and space. Each of these men differed in background and temperament, not molded by the rigid, uniform education common today. Many of the Galilean fishermen carried Gentile blood because 100 years before, the Jews had forcibly converted the people in Galilee. That only one apostle abandoned Jesus amid the trials ahead reveals the profound charisma and divine righteousness of his life among these men. Andrew, the first chosen. Andrew, chairman of the apostles throughout their mission, was born in Capernaum. He was 33 years old, a full year older than Jesus, and the oldest of the apostles. Andrew hailed from a noble lineage of esteemed ancestors, the eldest of 5 siblings, including his brother Simon and their 3 sisters. His father, who was dead, had been Zebedee's partner in the fish drying business at Bethsaida, the harbor for Capernaum. When Andrew became an apostle, he was living with his brother, Simon Peter, and his wife. They were both fishermen and partners with the brothers John and James Zebedee. Andrew possessed unmatched versatility among the 12 apostles, excelling in all but oratory. Jesus never gave Andrew a nickname, but before long, the rest of the apostles started calling him Chief, like they started to call Jesus Master. Andrew excelled in organizing, yet shone brightest in administering the sacred duties of his role. He decided quickly unless problems exceeded his authority, and in that case, he took them straight to Jesus. Andrew was firm, clear, and logical when needed, but his major strength was his stability. He never wavered. What he did lack was any enthusiasm for praising the others, even when it was deserved. Andrew simply abhorred flattery and insincerity. He epitomized the self-made, all-around, even-tempered, and successful man of modest affairs. Andrew, among Jesus' inner circle with John, James, and Peter, was bound by his duties, unable to join Jesus in his solitary prayers as the others did. Andrew was never an outstanding preacher, but he excelled in personal work, and he was Jesus' main supporter in his plan for the initial tour around the Sea of Galilee. Upon his selection, Andrew swiftly drew his brother Simon into the fold, and that man became one of the most significant preachers ever in the kingdom of heaven. Andrew and Simon Peter were unlike in character and temperament, but to their everlasting credit, they got along like best friends. It is not often that an older man like Andrew can exert such a profound influence over a younger and talented brother. But Andrew and Peter were the exceptions to the rule. They never seemed to be jealous of each other's achievements and proved that even brothers can live and work together peacefully. Late on the evening of Pentecost, after 2,000 souls were added to the kingdom because of Peter's energetic and inspiring sermon, Andrew told Peter, "Well, I could not have done that. I am glad to have a brother who could." And Peter returned the admiration, telling Andrew that if he had not brought him to Jesus and then kept him there, he would not have been there to do it. Following Peter's radiant Pentecost sermon, his fame soared. Yet Andrew, ever loyal, embraced his lifelong role as Simon Peter's brother with serene dignity. Of all the apostles, Andrew was the best judge of people. He knew that trouble was brewing in Judas Iscariot long before the others, but he never shared his fears. Andrew's great service to the kingdom was in advising John, Peter, and James concerning the choice of the first missionaries who were sent out to announce the gospel, and also in counseling these early leaders on administering the affairs of the kingdom. Andrew had a gift for discovering the latent talents of young people. While every one of the apostles loved Jesus, each was drawn to him because of some certain trait that made a special appeal to that apostle. For Andrew, it was Jesus' dignity and sincerity that he admired the most. Once men got to know Jesus, they wanted to share him with their friends and let the whole world know about him. Soon after the resurrection, Andrew began writing a personal journal of Jesus' life. After Andrew was himself killed, copies of his private record were made and freely given to the early teachers of the Christian faith. Andrew's informal notes were then later edited until they made up a fairly consecutive story of Jesus' life on earth. The last of these few altered copies was destroyed in a fire at Alexandria about 100 years after Andrew wrote the original. Later, after the persecutions had scattered the apostles far from Jerusalem, Andrew journeyed through Armenia, Asia Minor, and Macedonia. He brought many thousands of people into the kingdom before he was finally apprehended and crucified in Patri in Achaia. Andrew, unyielding, lingered 2 days on the cross, his voice a resolute murmur heralding the kingdom of heaven, guiding souls to God until his last breath. Now a quick word from the heart. If this is resonating with you, if it's stirring something deep, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and share with someone who might need this light. Peace on earth starts with us serving humanity for the sake of God, at home and beyond. Your simple actions help spread the Master's truth. Thank you. Now back to chapter 18, part 1. Simon Peter. When Simon joined the apostles, he was 30 years old. He was married, had 3 children, and lived in Bethsaida near Capernaum. His brother Andrew and his wife's mother lived with his family. Both Peter and Andrew were fishermen and partners with Zebedee's sons. Jesus had known Simon for some time before Andrew suggested him as the second apostle. When Jesus named Simon Peter, he did so with a light-hearted smile, meaning it to be a nickname, as Simon was known to be erratic and impulsive. Still, it is true that later on Jesus did attach new and significant importance to what he lightly bestowed on Simon. Simon Peter, an impetuous optimist, had matured freely, expressing his fervent emotions. He was always getting into trouble because he kept speaking without thinking. His thoughtlessness also made trouble for his friends, and at times Jesus had to kindly scold him for it. Peter's impulsive speech was tempered only by his early lesson to consult Andrew before veering into reckless tangents. Peter, a dynamic and eloquent herald, radiated natural and inspiring leadership. Peter's mind raced with swift thoughts, yet lacked the depth of profound reflection. He asked many questions, more than all the other apostles put together. But while most of them were relevant, there were many that were foolish and thoughtless. While Peter's mind was not complex, he did know himself fairly well. Because of this, he was known for quick decisions and sudden action. For example, while the others marveled at Jesus on the shore, Peter vaulted from the boat and swam ashore to reach his master. The trait Peter most revered in Jesus was his divine tenderness. He cherished Jesus' boundless patience and tolerance, ever mindful of his teaching to forgive the wrongdoer not merely 7 times, but 70 times 7. He thought much about this, about his master's forgiveness during those dark and dismal days after he had denied him in the high priest's courtyard. Simon Peter would suddenly swing from one extreme to the other. For example, at first he refused to let Jesus wash his feet, and then on hearing the master's reply, he begged Jesus to wash him all over. Still, Jesus knew that Peter's faults were in his head and not in his heart. He was one of the most unexplainable combinations of courage and cowardice that had ever lived on earth. His noblest strengths of character were loyalty and friendship. Peter truly loved Jesus. But despite his huge devotion to Jesus, he was so unstable and inconsistent that he even let a servant girl tease him into denying his Lord and Master. Peter stood resolute against persecution and direct assaults, yet faltered under the sting of ridicule. He was a brave soldier when he was facing a frontal attack, but he was a fear-cringing coward when surprised with an assault from the rear. Peter was the first of Jesus' apostles to defend Paul's work with the Gentiles and Philip's work with the Samaritans. But then later at Antioch, he reversed himself when he was ridiculed by some Jews, which then brought down Paul's wrath on him. Peter was the first apostle to make a wholehearted confession of Jesus' combined humanity and divinity, and yet at the same time, he was the first apostle, except for Judas, to deny him. It was not that Peter was so much a dreamer. He just wanted to indulge his ecstatic and enthusiastic side instead of handling the plain and matter-of-fact duties of the real world. When following Jesus, either figuratively or literally walking down the road, Peter was either leading the charge or trailing way behind. After his rash denials of Jesus, Peter found himself with Andrew and the others back at the fish nets while they waited to learn what was going to happen after the crucifixion. When Peter was completely sure that Jesus had forgiven him and he knew that he was still one of his apostles, the fires of the kingdom burned so brightly in his soul that he became a great and saving light to thousands who sat in darkness. Peter, the peerless preacher among the 12, surpassed all but Paul in establishing the kingdom of heaven, dispatching its heralds to earth's farthest reaches within a single generation. Peter's style and teachings are reflected in the sermons partly recorded by Luke and in the Gospel of Mark, but his vigorous style was better reflected in his first epistle of Peter, before its later alteration by one of Paul's disciples. After leaving Jerusalem, and before Paul became the leader of the Gentile Christian churches, Peter traveled extensively, visiting all of the churches from Babylon to Corinth. He even helped many of the churches that had been formed by Paul. Although Peter and Paul differed much in their education and temperaments, even in their theology, they worked together in harmony with one another to build churches during their later years. But Peter persisted in making the mistake of trying to convince the Jews that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. Right up to the day of his death, Simon Peter was confused between ideas of Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, Christ as the world's Redeemer, and the Son of Man as the revelation of God, our loving Father. Peter's wife was a strong and capable woman. For years, she was a member of the Women's Corps, and then when Peter was driven out of Jerusalem, she went with him on all of his missionary excursions. When Peter was finally caught by the Romans and condemned to die on the cross like Jesus had, a sentence that he considered to be a high honor, his loyal wife was fed alive to the wild beast in the arena at Rome. Okay, folks, that was part 1 of 5, chapter 18, the 12 Apostles. Up next, part 2, coming soon in the playlist. Hit like and subscribe, grab your copy of Son of Man, Urantia on Amazon, and let's all live out Jesus' message of love, mercy, and forgiveness, uplifting one heart at a time. Bobby Keyser, out here.